Thank you, Kathy. That was lovely. And it's so good to be with you, everyone here today, and especially, I'm going to say hi to Taylor and Tanya online. Nature. Wow. So overlooked, and without it, I mean, come on. It's all nature. But yet, do we see it? Do we really see it? Do we feel it? And I want to emphasize the feeling of it, because nature isn't to be thought about, it's to be immersed in. When they talk about the ocean, you don't know the ocean until you walk out into it. Oh, buddy, then you have a taste, and I do mean a taste of the ocean. The smell as it goes up your nose, oh boy. And you know you've been in the ocean. So it's an immersion thing. And the title of it is, well, the worship team came up with nature as a healing essence. There's something about nature. And if I think about what's the essence of spirituality, real spirituality, it's not about words. It's about some kind of feeling tone of being at ease and being at peace, returning to a harmony. And I think that nature does one of the best jobs of returning us to harmony and to peace. There's something about the magic, I'll call it the magic of nature. Now, when I say nature as healer, nature doesn't come out with its stethoscope and start healing. And nature doesn't heal, but nature gives us permission to come back, to return back to ease and to peace. And that's critical. Normally, we're walking in our cat paths. I know a lot about cats. And when the cats come out in the morning, and this is my morning routine, is I go out into nature and sit in the garden every morning, whether it's raining or not. I'm under an eave, so it's not rained on, but I go out there because it's different every morning. The smell is different, the temperature is different. It's just different every morning. And as I watch the cats, there is something about when they come out the front door, they don't just bolt out. They come out and they look. Both of them. And then they'll start their rounds. They're doing their exploring. What if when we were to walk out our front door, to stop and just to smell and to feel and to look around, just to take that moment? Perhaps just that moment of stopping, we can set the tone for the whole day. That something about that stopping and being curious, what is this day? What does it hold? Something about that can set us in a path, in a direction, and it's so easy to do. Now, there was a minister over in Japan, and he thought, well, walking in the cedars, I really enjoy it. It really does me good. I wonder if it does good for others. I know it does, but how can I prove it? How can I really do some research on that? So he did. And this was back in 1980. And he had two groups. One group was to walk 40 minutes a day in the city for a year, whenever they could. It wasn't compulsory, but when they felt to walk, they would walk and get their exercise. The other group was to walk in the cedar forest for 40 minutes whenever they could. And after the end of a year, what do you think happened? I know you know what happened. Less anxiety, less depression, lower blood pressure, improved immune responses, less colds and illness. They were healthier in mind and body by going out into nature. So did nature heal them, or did the nature within them heal them, or both. Doesn't matter. We know that it works. So, what is it, and why is it that we don't spend more time? Or maybe you do. And what I mean by spending more time, it's like if you have a house plant. When's the last time you really looked at the house plant, maybe dusted its leaves? I know you water it, but I mean, really looked at it. There's an orchid that's sitting on my my counter in my bathroom. And every year or two, it will send out a couple blossoms, and it's like, whoa, who knew? And I get very excited about that, because I'm curious, how's the plant doing? How are you doing? We think that plants don't have emotions, that they don't respond. And there's enough research that proves that wrong, that they're very responsive. There was a research that, the experiment they did with these vining peas, and they set up the experiment with an ultra blue light. They love this grow light. When that's turned on, these plants just go whoosh, and they all turn to bask in the light. It's like, wow. So then what they did is they set up this fan, and the fan would blow. And as soon as the fan would blow for a bit, then they turned the light on. So they were training the peas, so when they heard the light, when they heard the sound, the light would come on, kind of Pavlovian response. Was there a response? Could the peas learn that when the fan came on, the light would come on? Yep, they did. It got to the point where they could turn the fan on and the peas would go, oh boy, can't wait for the light. And they learned. And so that kind of points to an intelligence everywhere. And just because we can't measure it and see it doesn't necessarily mean it's not there. And we also think about nature as wonderful and sunny days, and that's true. That's one face of nature, but nature has two sides, has a very cruel and violent side. It's awesome, truly awesome. There are hurricanes and earthquakes and all kinds of things that make it the fullness of nature. Just like we have within us all kinds of goodness and all kinds of potential for other situations. So, where do we want to focus? Really, where is it that we want to focus our energy? We can focus on our sunny days, and we can focus on cloudy days, and some people like both. In fact, without them, we don't have a balance. So the idea is always coming back to a balance. What do we want to focus on? What's our balance? When I was 11 years old, my parents took us, our family, up into the mountains. I've lived in the hills of Oakland, so I knew nature, right? Oh no. We're up in the Sierras, and this little cabin is so small that my brother and I had to sleep out on the ground outside the cabin in the woods, scary woods. And no electricity. We did have running water. And this ice, I remember the ice chest. It was an ice box, the one where you opened the top and you put the block of ice right in the top. So during the day, my brother and I would free range, and we'd go off and explore. We came to this really special spot where we discovered an old trench that was running in water, and this was a water supply for another town. And the water moved about the same pace as you could walk, and it moved almost silently. And there was moss, and the trees came over, and it was just heaven. It was like, our little cathedral we had discovered. And this is my happy place. If I'm in trouble, or if I have a hard time going to sleep or something, I just go back to that place. I know hopefully each of you has a happy place. A place, for me it's always nature are my happy places. That place where I feel safe, secure, at ease. I can just let go. And that's really how nature heals. It gives us that sense, that permission to stop, to really stop and to let go. And when we stop, truly stop, and when we're curious enough and we're distracted enough to where we're looking at the bird in flight or the waves that just continuously lap against the shore, in a sense, a trance is broken. And when the trance is broken, thoughts stop. Who we think we are is no longer relevant. We are just one with the bird or the ocean or the water or the wind. And as we become, as Eckhart Tolle, as we drop into the now, we become present. This is beginner's mind. And when we stop and are just being, something magical happens. There's no separation. There's no me. I disappear. That's one of the wonderful things about going into nature. When I disappear, what's left is just nature. My problems disappear. Christopher disappears, and that's a delight. It really is a delight. I know that I will return again and again. But to have that relief, that moment, those moments of, the moments that we live for, those moments of divine connection, if we want to call it that, this communion with nature, just as it is. My dad and I would probably take 2 trips a year to the Southwest, Navajo country, the big rocks, and all of that. We'd take 2 folding chairs. And we'd find a spot, it wouldn't matter, we'd be driving, and all of a sudden, is it time? And he'd say, yep, it's time. And we'd pop out of the car, and we'd walk out, half hour out into the desert, and we'd find a place, pop the chairs down, usually separate from each other, and just be. This is what's called being in nature. If you're actually being in nature, and that means no thought, just observation mode. And we would spend, it was never less than a half hour and never more than an hour, and we would both know when it was time to come back together. And for the first 10 minutes, it was like sort of settling in, kind of getting comfortable and sort of feeling this new area. And it was always fresh, new. And we start looking, and there wasn't much to see. It was just the rocks and the clouds until you settled in and you saw that the clouds are moving. The shapes are moving. And occasionally you'd see a bird go by. And you could hear the insects. But at first, that wasn't available. It was a sense of settling. Are you getting what I'm saying? Settling in to where all of that came up and came to us. And in those moments, and I can recall so many of those moments, it became timeless. There was no urgency to do anything. This is being present. This is being in nature. This is being, simply being. And how often do we give ourselves this kind of bath, bathing? The Japanese researcher coined the word forest bathing, walking in the forest. I'll call this desert bathing. but actually bathing in nature, intentionally taking the time to dissolve into the oneness, to actually experience the oneness that we talk about, but do we feel it? Every place has its own feeling. When you walk through these doors, this sanctuary has a feeling. How aware are we of the feeling? We don't have to know why being in nature works. It just does. When we take the time, it works. I was on a bike ride on Friday, and I ride my electric bike because it takes me out into nature, and I go to all the parks in the Oakland Hills and beyond, and out to Mount Diablo. And I was riding on Friday, and I ride on trails where there's nobody. I don't see anybody. And here's this guy walking along with this camera, this lens that was huge. And he was taking up the whole trail, so I stopped. And as he walked closer, I said, that camera's about as big as you are. And he said, yeah, it's huge. And my feet are so tired. I went, wow, you were a long way out. And he said, yeah, I know. And so we started talking. And I asked him, because I'm giving this talk today, right? What brings you out here? And he says, oh, I've got to come out here. If I don't, I go crazy. It's the solitude. For me, I come out and the vistas are incredible, and I'm a birder, so I'm looking for birds. But, whether I find a bird or not, that's not it. I come out for the solitude and just for the vastness of it all. There's something about the space up here. How do we define space? He was a great guy. We had a great conversation, but the idea of the space got to me. We don't get that we need space when we're in the city, because there's city people, there's country people, and there's people that live on the edge of both. I'm sort of the one that lives on the edge of both. And we feel comfortable in each of those different boundary layers. But there are times when we just need space, when we have problems that are coming in, when we're feeling out of sorts. When we give those situations space, something magical happens. So, the idea of curiosity. How willing are we to explore, to go out and to find something new? And we have bunches of reasons. I don't have the time. Where can I find something new that I'd really like? I don't know. Or I'm curious. I'm really curious. I wonder what is beyond Mount Diablo. What is the Delta like? I've never been to the Delta, really. I've never spent time there. I may like it, I might not. I'll never know. So, the invitation really is to get out into nature with a curiosity, with the beginner's mind, and to see if you won't be delighted by what you find on your walk, on your exploration. The Oakland Hills are filled with old redwoods that are still there. You can find them. It's great to run across them. And when you do, and when you run across beauty, as opposed to processing it here, can you drop into what does it feel like here? What does it feel like in your whole body? As you come across the redwoods or places of beauty or the ocean or looking from the top of Mount Diablo out over the whole Bay Area and the Sierras, what does it feel like? And that's feeling is the language of nature. Nature doesn't speak, but nature speaks through feelings, through resonant tones, through vibrations. And you can pick up those vibrations. They're everywhere, and you can become more aware of them. And perhaps that's really the best we can do for healing, is just to become more awake and aware to what's already before us. So let's take that into prayer. As we return perhaps to our happy place, the place that is always safe, always available, always ready to embrace us, regardless of our problems. And as we sit in the embrace of that place, knowing that our problems simply for a moment dissolve, disappear, that any worries or anxiety that we have simply vanishes in that place of simply aware being. And so I claim for each of us today a new curiosity in nature, a new curiosity in the permission to go out, to explore, and to disappear into the oneness that nature provides. To know that our minds can stop, that we can relax, that we can be at ease with all of life that is before us. For this and the more, I am so, so grateful as I release this prayer, knowing it is blessed and already complete, and so it is.